government or Harvard University or any other institution, just my personal views. And you'll undoubtedly have some questions to which I don't know the answer, and I hope I have the good sense to say so. Okay? So that's the idea. First, the quiz. So if you would do the quiz here, this should take you about 2 minutes. As I say, it's ungraded. First question, could the global nuclear order be as fragile as the landscape of the Middle East was this time last year? Answer yes or no. You can just put it on your sheet. Second question, could North Korea's Kim Jong-il imagine that he could sell a nuclear weapon to somebody like Osama bin Laden and get away with it? The answer is yes or no. Third question, I give you multiple choice. Okay? So if Iran's nuclear programs at Natanz, that's where the enrichment plant is, and also where Bushehr will soon be operating, and Qom were eliminated either by an Israeli airstrike or by an agreement. What impact would that have on the date on which Iran acquires its first nuclear weapon? So delay, advance, none. Fourth, what's the single biggest threat to the U.S. security short-term, medium-term, and long-term? Fifth, who said nuclear terrorism is the most serious danger the world is facing? And final question, where is Mr. Zawahiri, who is Mr. bin Laden's deputy, the Egyptian number 2 in the Al-Qaeda structure? By the end of my lecture, you'll know my answers to these questions, and if not, we'll do those in the Q&A. And the second is from Nuclear Tipping Point, where again you can get the disc of it from the Nuclear Threat Initiative. So one of the difficulties of dealing with the nuclear topic in the region here, as I've discovered from talking in Iran or in Dubai or in Saudi, is the gap between the conversation that's held in public and what the leaders of the countries actually say when they're talking in private. So for a sense of the topic, at least as they arise at the governmental level, for those of us who only have the public conversation, I would say these provide a treasure trove for us as academics. As a government, and sometimes government official, I'm appalled that they're there, but if they're there, I might as well read them carefully to see. And actually, if you go through the whole region, I just had a student in my class go through and do the collection for me. I was even surprised at how much the nuance as you go around the region with respect to the threat posed by Iran's nuclear weapons program. So that's that topic. For the region here in general, this is again all by way of introduction, there's a nuclear, some people call it renaissance or awakening, in which you see development of nuclear energy programs in Pakistan, in Iran, where the Bushehr reactor was meant to go online and actually has had some problems with its fuel, but will go online before long. And as was mentioned in the introduction, the UAE, which is breaking ground for the 4 new modern South Korean constructed reactors in a program that really is the gold standard for civilian nuclear power programs worldwide, and in Jordan. For nuclear weapons programs, there are just 2 in the region that have nuclear arsenals today, Israel and Pakistan. Israel is an unacknowledged nuclear weapon state. That is, Israel maintains what they call strategic ambiguity, but everybody in the business knows that Israel has a nuclear arsenal of a couple of hundred weapons. And Pakistan, which has the most rapidly expanding nuclear arsenal on Earth. For this was now the slides I prepared before the horrible events with the earthquake and tsunami in Japan. But just to remind us, when we try to think about the fragility of systems, all systems are subject to failure under some circumstances. And this was the terrible earthquake in Iran back in '03 at Bam, where you can see a building that looks like it's fine, and it was fine, but after an earthquake is rubble. So who said that nuclear terrorism is the greatest threat facing the world? Mohammed al-Baradei. Al-Baradei, as you know, is now a presidential candidate in Egypt. He's a great international public servant. As director of the IAEA, he and the IAEA were awarded very appropriately, in my view, the Nobel Peace Prize in 2005. And Mohammed is absolutely clear. Nuclear danger should be a riveting threat for everybody in the world, not just for nuclear weapons specialists. President Obama has come to office with a passion for this subject. And here's a statement from him last year that from the American point of view, because he's talking to the American population, the single biggest threat, short, medium, and long, is the possibility of terrorists with a nuclear weapon. I would say that's a pretty strong statement. I probably wouldn't have written it quite that way, since the U.S. faces lots of challenges, short, medium, and long. But is it a first-order, real, genuine threat? Answer, yes. In a line that is very similar to the one from the Crown Prince that I quoted, here's from the UN high-level panel, which was impaneled by Kofi Annan, 12 wise women and men from around the world. The American participant was Brent Scowcroft. The Japanese participant was Sadaka Ogata. And they said, this is an extremely important line, we're approaching a point at which the erosion of the non-proliferation regime, that's the whole global nuclear order, could become irreversible. So erosion, irreversible, triggering a cascade of proliferation. That would be the knock-on effect that bin Zayed spoke about if Iran should become a nuclear weapon state. So in the foreign affairs piece that was handed out, I analyzed 9 major trend lines that are systematically undermining the global nuclear order. And if this were an academic lecture, I might take you through each one of them and we might analyze them carefully. Let me just give you the headlines. Relentless advance of science and technology that is diffusing knowledge. That's happening inescapably. Secondly, the emergence of black market proliferators. Example in chief, Mr. A.Q. Khan. Third, successful violation of the non-proliferation regime by one of the poorest, weakest, most isolated states on earth. That's North Korea. Fourth, Iran's success in crossing successive red lines as it moves methodically towards its nuclear bomb. Fifth, internal dynamics of Pakistan. What I wrote a piece back in '03 called A Ticking Nuclear Time Bomb. Next, the reality of mega terrorism. On 9/11, terrorists killed twice as many people as the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor did that brought the U.S. into World War II. So mega terrorism is now a fact of life. We have an existence theorem. Next, non-proliferation regime fatigue. We were talking about that earlier this afternoon. Next, the apparent utility of nuclear weapons in arms control. In international affairs, many people ask if Saddam Hussein had had nuclear weapons, would George Bush have attacked him in 2003? That's a good question. And finally, the civilian nuclear renaissance, or awakening, that I mentioned earlier. Now, each of these are powerful trend lines propelled by their own dynamics each of which is eroding what we've known as the global nuclear order. But if this order is as fragile as the landscape of the Middle East was this time last year, or Wall Street's based financial system was in 2007, and if it should unravel, the consequences would be nuclear weapons in the hands of terrorists, one of the topics I'm focused on tonight, and nuclear wars. So that would be the systematic analysis. What I'm going to do in these slides is take you quickly through the tip of several of these